Welcome to TalkNorth.com. Thanks to our longtime producer, Brandon Morton. Please download before you listen. If you'd like to advertise with us, you can reach us at talknorthpodcast@gmail.com. And please follow us on Twitter at TalkNorthPod. Two promo codes to be aware of. BiteSquad.com. Use the promo code TalkNorth to get your first delivery free. And go to SodaStick.com, the great local apparel company. Use the promo code YouBetcha to get free shipping on any sized order. We have so much to talk about this week on Roy Smalley's Chin Music that, given the name of the podcast, which refers to the high inside fastball under somebody's chin in Major League Baseball, what did you make of the Reds, Pirates brawl and brawls, and did you ever get involved in one of those yourself?
Well, there's obviously some bad blood, and they were quite the brawls. I was never the instigator of anything, or
sure, that's what you say now.
but you know, you kind of get in the middle of it. One of the worst ones we ever had was in Milwaukee, and it was scary. It was Steve Lombardozzi got hit with a pitch, and then he slid ultra hard into Jim Gantner at second base. And both of them, you know, it knocked him down. They both went to the ground and never came up. It was a scuffle and a fight in the dirt behind second base. And so the bench is empty, and you know, you nobody. I mean, some guys get mad, and you know, you try to pull guys off of guys, and then the other fights, you know, break out and all that kind of stuff. I found myself in the middle of that scrum, and all of a sudden I looked down, and this big outfielder and I don't even remember his name right now, big strong guy for the Brewers, kind of spun around with Tom Brunansky, and they fell down, and the Milwaukee outfielder landed on top of Bruno. So Bruno's on his back, and this guy's got him down, and I jumped on his back to try to help protect Bruno, and I was whispering in the guy's ear. I had him kind of around. I was on his back and on the ground, and had him kind of around the neck, and you know, thinking that if he shakes me off somehow here, I got real problems. And I'm whispering. I'm in his ear going, "Okay, big man, nothing else to happen from here." Let's, you know, because he knew how he was sandwiched between two Twins guys, and I said, let's just back off and be cool here. And fortunately for me, he agreed to do that. We got up, and that was the end of that particular intra fracas event that I had. That was probably the closest I came to really getting in the middle of something serious.
So during the brawl, did Gladden go out and try to punch Lombardozzi?
Yeah, no, and I can't remember where that was in the timeline of all of those kinds of things that happened. But no, you know, the one thing about Danny Gladden, there are a lot of things about Danny Gladden. But
there are a lot of things about Danny Gladden.
One salient thing about Danny Gladden is that he was a teammate's teammate. He liked his teammates. He stood up for his teammates, and it was one of the reasons why he had an issue with Steve Lombardozzi that one time. So because Gladden took issue to Steve Lombardozzi's display of what Gladden considered to be selfishness and non-team attitude. So, you know, Danny was a great teammate.
Yeah, I've heard that from all levels of the Twins organization, and I like Dan a lot, by the way. All right, let's get to current events. This is Roy Smalley's Chin Music, part of the TalkNorth.com podcast network. Thank you to Barry Coffey, BarryCoffey.com, and Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent who works out of Champlin. Let's get to the trading deadline. The Twins end up trading for two good back-of-the-bullpen arms, Both have closing experience. Both have saved 30 or more games in a season. Obviously, they had different debuts. Sergio Romo was spectacular. Although he had a battle through it, the pitches are still very entertaining to watch. And then Sam Dyson had probably his worst outing of the season in his first appearance as a Twin. But, Roy, I felt like all along, and we've been talking about trade deadline stuff. I do radio hits around the state, and people have been asking me about trade deadline stuff for months. And all along I said, I think they're going to get 2 bullpen arms and not give up a top prospect. That's what they did. Did you expect more, and what did you think of these moves?
I didn't expect more, especially as it got later and I started getting a sense of, of what other teams were asking. The interesting thing about having this one-time trade deadline, July 31st, and no more waiver deals and all that kind of stuff, is, and the combination with that and the fact that there are 2 wild card teams and so many that are going to be in the playoffs, at least a one gamer, and so that brings so many teams into play in terms of not being automatic sellers and thinking about being buyers, and it just heightens the volume of demand, which in my business would, it makes stock prices go higher, and that's what we saw. We just that there's so many teams looking to get the same thing, so it just forces prices higher on what teams want in return. And when I started getting a sense of what other teams were talking about, I didn't think a starter. Everybody was talking about Syndergaard. People are mad that the Twins didn't make an effort for Greinke. Greinke has a no trade clause in his contract. I'm pretty sure that includes the Twins as being one he won't go to. So that's silly. I mean, there's no chance of getting him. Bumgarner is a rental player. You can't give up a prospect for him, and he's 33 or whatever he is years old. Syndergaard seemed to be really intriguing. I heard that the Mets wanted Buxton. That's a no deal. I don't make that deal in 3 lifetimes.
Nope.
You just don't know what other teams were asking for when the Twins were inquiring, for a big blockbuster. I mean, blockbuster trade by definition means big name players move from both teams, or in the case of the Indians, Reds, and Padres, 3 teams. Right, and so it just wasn't likely that the Twins were going to be able to make a blockbuster kind of trade for a Noah Syndergaard type of starter, for example, and there just weren't that many other options. So I agree with you. The 2 arms that they got for back end of the bullpen for what they gave up, I thought was 2 really good moves. And unfortunately, Sam Dyson had the day that he had. So totally uncharacteristic. I mean, he walked 7 guys in 51 innings, and then he walked 2 yesterday, and in the game against Miami. So you can see, you can imagine a scenario where he'd been, on an emotional ride a little bit, and then a longish plane ride, and gets there just in time to pitch the 9th inning, right? So probably uncharacteristic. I think Romo and Dyson are going to really help down the stretch.
I agree, we're recording this on Friday, late morning, early afternoon. I have a piece in the Sunday Star Tribune. One thing I heard is, I would say if you want, listen, everybody wants to criticize the Twins front office right now. That's where we are in the season. I think there are 2 legitimate criticisms. One is I don't think you overpay at the deadline under these circumstances. You could say that they should have done a better job building a bullpen this winter. They went out and they bolstered their lineup. They looked for both quality hitters and leaders. They got them in Cruz and Morrow and Gonzalez. They ended up building a juggernaut of a lineup. They didn't really do that with the bullpen. They said, hey, we're going to figure it out with people in-house. Romero ended up not working out, at least not yet. Hildenberger ended up not working out. Blake Parker only worked for a couple of months where he backslid. So, you can make that criticism. As far as the trade deadline, the one thing I think the Twins internally regret, and maybe the oddest move made at the deadline, was the Blue Jays have one of the best best assets in baseball in Marcus Stroman, a very good pitcher who's under control for next year, and they traded him well before the deadline for two not 100 top 100 prospects with the Mets. And I think if the Twins had to do it all over again, they would jump out ahead of that one, try to beat the Mets for Stroman. And I think that there's some consternation within the industry that the Blue Jays made that deal without really pushing it to the deadline, giving everybody a swing at it.
Yeah, I can't figure out the Blue Jays at all. Everybody was down on the Mets for making that deal, and
the Blue Jays are screwed up.
I think the Mets made a great deal. I mean, now they've got a rotation of DeGrom, Syndergaard, and Marcus Stroman, and they can work on the wintertime and improving everywhere else. So for a couple of prospects, as you say, that that weren't top 100, well, I look at the Blue Jays and scratch my head on that one. The other thing I heard, and you probably know more than I, but the Twins were in conversations with the Blue Jays, and the Blue Jays seemed to kind of jilt them there, jump the gun and jilt them, and so I don't know what you do. I'm not in the room, listening. Would love to be a fly on the wall, but you just don't know. You can certainly imagine a scenario where they're talking to the Blue Jays. They're thinking, we got a good chance to get something done here, and then all of a sudden the rug's pulled out from under them. The negotiations in those deals, you never come out and say and give someone your best offer on the first phone call, and I mean that's just the way it works. And for Toronto not to see what was possible elsewhere besides that deal they got from the Mets is really, really a head scratcher to me.
Yeah, the other thing I would say, Jim, to your other point about what they could have done in the wintertime, they really thought Hildenberger was going to be better, and I think they really thought Romero was going to be a viable option, but so that kind of blindsided them. But the thing, you and I talked about this, and it was the reason, and I remember saying this on this show back in November or December when you and I were pushing for Kimbrel, and whether it was Kimbrel or just bolstering the bullpen somewhere else, my comment back then was, what if? What if Nelson Cruz really is Nelson Cruz? What if the young players go off? What if Byron Buxton and Sano and Kepler and Polanco and Rosario go off here? If you don't take the chance on trying to make your club better in the bullpen, especially with a closer in my view, but just in the bullpen, then what happens if you look up in midseason and these guys have gone off and you're in the thick of it and you haven't done it? And we talked about that in November and December, and lo and behold, the young kids have gone off, and the veterans have been what they hoped they would be, and here you are wishing that that you had done something else. Yeah, that's exactly right. And we both called for Kimbrel at the time. It became obvious that nobody in baseball wanted to give up the draft choice, and now Kimbrel kind of sabotaged himself, signs midseason, and now is a 6.17 ERA. So I like the idea of Kimbrel back in November, December. I'm not sure taking him up at midseason was going to work as well. But yeah, good points on all. Thanks to Berry Coffee, berrycoffee.com. Roy's friend Steve Brem became a friend of mine. And Roy sometimes talks about his beverage services, and we always talk about the Bull Run blend that we enjoy so much at home. And the cool thing is that you can get whatever equipment you want for whatever kind of coffee or other beverages you want at home. You don't have to go through the drive-thru. You don't have to drive someplace to get great coffee. You can actually make better coffee and better beverages at home. They have coffee brewing machines, they have espresso and cappuccino makers, they have food service, they have single serve, they have water filtration services, they can sell you a coffee grinder, thermos, they can sell you all kinds of different high-end brands. They can sell you more of the proletariat brands, Keurigs, Flavia, Roar, Starbucks Cup, Cooltech ice maker. It's amazing how much cool stuff they have. And if you're like me, you'd rather spend money with a local Minneapolis, Minnesota-based company than just, go to one of the the either online or big box retailers and just send your money to somebody you don't know. I'd rather I do spend my money